Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today it is my absolute pleasure to have Jim Langley on. Jim is the president of Langley Innovations, and he's pioneered a number of practices that have been emulated by hundreds of institutions of higher learning. The knowledge he acquired from conceiving and conducting 3 path-breaking campaigns at 3 major institutions, and the insight he gleaned from decades of research on donor behavior has been shared in 5 books, dozens of articles, hundreds of blog posts, and scores of seminars, workshops, and speeches. As Vice President for Advancement at Georgetown University, Jim imagined and led a massive discovery initiative, conducting face-to-face interviews of alumni around the world. The purpose of the interviews was to discover what Jim calls the animating passions of the alumni, then link those passions with the university's programmatic initiatives to establish Georgetown as the place that alumni not only give to, but through, to realize their larger societal ideals. Renowned for his public speaking, Jim's professional seminars are consistently described as the best I've ever attended by his peers, and he's been awarded the Crystal Apple by the Council for the advancement and support of education for having received the highest possible evaluations from attendees at 10 different conferences. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Jack. Glad to be with you.
You know, you've been in the business for quite some time, and I'm sure folks come to you and say, Jim, I'm thinking about getting into the fundraising profession. And, I always think of it as a very noble profession to be in. And I'm quite proud to be a fundraiser where, other folks, kind of see it somewhere in between a used car salesman and an insurance salesman, right? I don't. I think we're a means to an end to actually accomplish some pretty important things in society. So what's your favorite part about being a fundraising professional?
Yeah, and so I agree with you. It's a noble profession. We are a very important part of the philanthropic equation. We are given the privilege of seeing human nature at its best. People willing to give of themselves, of their hard-earned work and wealth to help others, that they say, I'm lucky, I have enough for myself. Now, what do I do with the privilege I've been handed or the luck I've been handed, or what do I do with this good fortune? That's a beautiful thing to witness. And if we can be a broker of that, if we can facilitate that, that's incredibly moving. And so while when I was first asked by a president to move into it, I had those apprehensions, Jack. I thought, like hell, this is arm twisting. He said, no. He said, people want to give. People are wired to give, many people. Mm-hmm. And it's finding out the nexus, of why they want to give and finding something within your organization that corresponds to that. So that was a very good orientation that I got that many people didn't. So I loved that, what I would call, many people call qualification. I love this whole notion of discovering, and you even read that in your nice introduction, where we deployed students to discover donors' animating passions. I loved the challenge of the initial meeting. I loved trying to ask questions in a way and demonstrate a sincerity that put people at ease, to let them know I was working with them, not against them, not sneaking up on them. And to ask these probing questions where they would start to tell me their story, I'd start to see this theme to their story. Then I'd start to say, if that's what lights you up, might I tell you more about X or introduce you to Y, mm-hmm. or bring you in to see Z. So I love that discovery process. I began as a journalist, Jack. I've written, as you know, a lot about the art and science of an interview. I developed this whole notion of a forensic interview, asking questions that reveal, but not in an exploitive way, but actually help people understand who they are. Love that discovery, and when that's done well, the rest of fundraising just falls in place quite naturally.
Yeah.
just love, and still to this day, love conversation more than anything else in the world, and think conversation is an art form that we could all work on reviving, deepening, strengthening for our betterment and the betterment of everything we do.
I couldn't agree more. When you go on a visit, or a canvas as we call it up here, um, the actual ask part is like 90 seconds, right? Like it's such a small piece of that whole interaction. And that's what people get spooked over. And I'm like, no, just
Wow.
have a discussion.
It's so overstated, isn't it? Like the courage to ask. Well, if you have the productive conversation, the opportunity to ask unfolds, right?
Right.
It becomes natural. Oh, then might you, right? It just unfolds. But if you're awkward in the conversation, or the conditions aren't right, and you try to be peremptory, I think it could be awkward and it could backfire if you just kind of lurch in there. So I
Most
think that's
definitely.
it. You create the conditions that let canvas just naturally unfold, and it doesn't seem disrespectful or obtrusive, because you are saying, in effect, if that's what you care about, would you be interested in this? It isn't, we want you to do these things for our benefit. We are, at our best, matchmakers,
Right.
and I think that's what might be, we could really help people coming into the field understand, and better train them to do, and work with boards and leaders to understand, when done well, this is a matchmaking exercise, which means, they need some training, some
Right.
orientation, and they need some good ideas about differences that could be made, not just list of things you want,
Right. Right.
differences you could make. And, I work on this every day at every possible level.
Right, right. And so many times we're just asking folks to fund impact, right? You aren't asking them for a piece of equipment. You're asking them to cure cancer, and it's just you need this
That's
piece of
right.
equipment in order to cure cancer.
That's right. That's
So
exactly what you're doing. And so we'll say, we want this new building, and we'll show them plans for the new building. And we say, oh, we can get everybody under one roof and we'll collaborate. You see, what we lost was the narrative of, and then what? What's the
right,
societal impact?
yes,
And if we do all those things, then who will we better serve? How will we better serve? What difference will we make? How will we improve the human condition? It's like in our brain, but we've stopped the story before we've gotten to the most compelling part of it.
most definitely. Most definitely. So you've been quite active on LinkedIn, and I love following your stuff. It's some great stuff, and you always kind of compare how fundraising kind of used to work with the way how it's working today. And I think that there has been quite a lot of changes that we really have to identify. But how do you think fundraising as a profession is going to change, or be seen in kind of the next 5 years or 10 years, or even like the next 30 years? Because it's certainly different today than it was a little bit ago. And I think COVID was one factor, but I think, fundraising was going to change anyways. COVID just
It was
accelerated it.
anyway, Jack. It was evolving because philanthropic behaviors were evolving. And that's what I keep reminding people is fundraising adapts because philanthropic behaviors adapt. So for instance, the way we make our money affects the way we give our money. So when I started my career, I would say most people giving had either inherited wealth or earned their wealth in a corporation. Today, there's much more entrepreneurial wealth. Entrepreneurs, build something out of the ground. They build companies to address societal needs or something they feel is missing in the marketplace. So they're oriented to the market. So when you're approaching an entrepreneur, it's very different than approaching somebody with inherited wealth or corporate wealth, because life has taught them to look into the horizon, to anticipate, to be bold. And that's what they want from the organization is, what do you see out there that's changing? What are your capabilities to change it? What's the audacious but attainable concept that we can talk about? And how are you going to bring me into that conversation? That's very different, let's say, than that trusting World War II generation, we'll call the silent generation, or the early baby boomers, who put their faith in organizations, trusted them, and basically said, you're the proxy for my values. So if you come to me with, a credible statement of what you need or want to do your job better, I'm going to trust you. That's changed.
Right.
We use the word trust a lot, and I think sometimes we overstate mistrust as much as what we're seeing is the desire to better trust if you provide me with the information that helps me make the decision.
Right.
It isn't as if they start in a mistrusting place, but life has taught them before you make a consequential decision, review facts, data, think about your values, think about what's important to you. And when we meet them where they are, let's take that entrepreneurial wealth, we're seeing larger commitments than we saw from those people who made their money through corporate means or inherited money. So this entrepreneur is bold, forward-thinking, and willing to make large investments when they're met with very plausible concepts. So that's it. I think the other thing is exactly where you and I were just a few minutes ago, is it's not about the ask, it's about the interview, it's about listening. And so you're not looking for the bold asker, you're looking for the emotionally intelligent interviewer.
Right. Right.
And so many people, Jack, when I came into this job, and maybe still in some places, are being hired because they're perceived to be the courageous asker. But you see, that's the naive assumption. That's the person who doesn't know fundraising going, it must be a terrifying thing to ask for that much money. Therefore, what I need is the courage to ask. So somebody comes in and models that behavior, confident, bit of swagger. I'll ask anybody for anything. Oh, let's hire him or her.
Right.
Right. But there have been multiple studies, including one done by in the U.S. by I think it's called the Education Advisory Board, where they actually studied and said it was the number one attribute of successful fundraisers is curiosity. You see, that's where that natural conversationalist comes from. Mm-hmm. You just, wow, I'm in front of this interesting, successful person. I want to know what made him. You just start asking. You just start, and the more genuine interest you show in them, the more you put them at ease, right? So we're going to move much more into fostering, looking for curiosity, teaching people the right questions to ask, what to listen for, how to develop philanthropic partnerships, not just get gifts.
Right.
So we got a little short-term obsessed, a little gift-getting obsessed, and donors started to fall away. So now we got to go back to a more fundamentally sound model of partnership building, of philanthropic partnership building, where that partnership will be sustained over time and produce multiple gifts because we are working together toward common ends. You're not seducing somebody to give to what you want, but you're really developing that partnership together. So we wandered off that path. We got a little bit into the automation of fundraising. We got into short-termitis. We lost donors, and so we got to go back to community building and doing things together and demonstrating how people can help people.
Right.
That's where it's going. So I think we're going to look for not the classic extrovert, the backslapper. We're going to look for that more quiet, authentic interviewer who's going to be more like a social scientist, not try to wow you into philanthropic submission, but listen into sustainable compacts. That's where it's going. And donors are screening out people they see as kind of generic fundraisers, and they're looking for matchmakers, brokers, people that will, as we said, introduce them to doers, to difference makers, who will bring them in as a part of the equation, bring them in, and together we'll start addressing these tough issues together.
Right.
I just don't want to throw money over the transom anymore. That's what donors are really saying. I want more exposure to the champions within. I want more conversations with them, and I want to see who we're helping and how we're helping them. I want to witness that for myself. The big beneficiary in Canada and the U.S. during COVID is what? Food banks. Mm-hmm. That's where a lot of money moves. People haven't given before. They start giving to food banks. when we interview them on both sides of the border. Why? I could see the lines.
Right.
I could see.
Yeah.
I knew the need was real. I could see the solution being provided. I knew the people in lines could be friends, neighbors, loved ones, maybe even me.
Right.
That's what we've got to remember.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Jim, this has been absolutely a great chat. Thank you so much for joining. If folks
Pleasure,
wanted
Jeff.
to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
You can reach me just at my email, jim@langleyinnovations.com. And I also welcome anybody on LinkedIn. I post regularly, as you know, Jack, and think of myself as a conversation starter. Try to raise interesting questions and make provocative points. So I'd welcome anybody joining that dialogue.
Amazing. Those are such great little nuggets that you put. They aren't, these 25-page missives that you have to read. They're easily digestible, and you scratch your head and you're going, they're totally logical.
Right. Good. Well, coming from you, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Jim.
My pleasure, Jack. Thank you so much.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.